Most homes in the United States are built from wood. But why is that when there are tornadoes and hurricanes and floods that often destroy them? Most of the rest of the world uses other materials like concrete and bricks. So why is the US different, and should we stop building with lumber and use some other better material? The answers may surprise you. So I make a lot of videos about lumber, and I often get comments like these where people question why we in the US are still building with wood. It's a fair question, even if some of the comments from Europeans especially do get a bit snarky. Well, as it turns out, there are some very, very good reasons why homes in the US are still built from wood. And wood has a lot of advantages over other materials. That said, wood also has some distinct disadvantages. But the first thing to understand about wood is that wood is a very versatile material, and it's been used to build everything from ships to furniture to toys to homes for thousands of years. It can be cut and shaped and chiseled and joined and can last for hundreds of years if well cared for. But there are also some serious problems with wooden buildings. Wood can rot. It can be eaten by insects. It can be burned in fire. A lot of new types of building materials are being tried out in the US right now, including 3D printed homes built with cement. There's also a product called hempcrete that is made from hemp. There's bamboo, and even homes built out of metal shipping containers. But none of these materials have really taken off. Still today, about 94% of all homes in the US are built from wood, and that number is actually up from about 90% in 2019. So what is the reason? Why have these other methods not taken off, and why are so many homes in the US today still built from wood? Well, to truly understand it, we need to know a bit of history, going all the way back when the European settlers first arrived in what would later become the United States. There wasn't any cement and there weren't any brick factories, but there were vast forests. These forests contained seemingly limitless supplies of white pines, chestnuts, oaks, and other useful trees that could be used to build homes and other buildings. And that's exactly what happened. Forests were cut and cities were built. As the country grew and settlements expanded, even more timber resources were discovered and a huge industry developed, aided by the railroads. These pictures from that time really show the scale of the operation. It was huge, and there was a reason for it. The country was growing rapidly, mainly due to immigration from Europe and other places. From 1850 to 1900, the population of the US grew by over 228%, or 50 million people. From 1900 to 1950, the country doubled again and added another 75 million people. All of those people needed homes to live in, and the quickest and easiest way to build them was to use the most abundant resource around, which was wood. But before we get into that, I need to tell you about this video's sponsor, PDS Debt. Life can be tough when you're dealing with debt, and this is the perfect time of year to get a handle on your finances. If you feel like you're drowning because you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances just don't seem to be going down, then PDS Debt may be right for you. The first step is to contact PDS Debt for a personalized debt solution, whether you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies, and there's no minimum credit score required. And the best thing is that PDS Debt can help you consolidate all of your debt into one low monthly payment, which can help you save money while you're paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. So make this the year you take control of your debt. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/DIY with Dave. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/DIY with Dave. Now back to the video. The US also led in innovations in building and invented new construction techniques like balloon framing. Here are a couple of diagrams that date back to 1857. On the left, we have an example of balloon framing, and on the right, we have an example of post and beam construction. Balloon framing was innovative because it was simpler, faster, and cheaper. It used studs instead of beams and used nails instead of joinery. That made the process much quicker, it used less timber, and it didn't require as much expertise in the art of joinery. Balloon framing hasn't been done since around the 1950s, but we actually use very similar techniques today. Today, most of the framing we do is called platform framing or stick framing. But these methods worked well because the US had a need for a quick and inexpensive way to build homes. again because of the rapid increases in population from both immigration and from native births. And then we hit World War II. The end of World War II saw another huge need for homes, with all of the returning GIs starting families and the subsequent baby boom. From 1950 to 1959, we constructed over 10 million new homes in the United States, which is about the same amount as were constructed in the previous 30 years combined. There were also a bunch of other factors that impacted home building at the time, aside from just the GIs returning home. The Federal Housing Administration was created, and the Veterans Home Loan Program was created to help veterans buy homes. There was also more migration into suburbs, and there was mass production of homes from companies like Levitt & Sons. And that mass production favors methods that are cheaper and quicker. And then from 1950 to 2000, the country added another 130 million people. All of those people needed homes too. And so again, we used our most abundant resource, lumber. Lumber was readily available and relatively inexpensive, and it allowed for homes to be built quickly. Since then, however, things have changed a bit. As I mentioned before, there are a lot more building techniques and materials available today than there have ever been in the past. But again, a lot of those other materials have not caught on. So aside from availability, why are homes in the US still built out of wood, especially considering the huge fluctuations in prices that we've seen over the past few years? Well, here is the truth. Yes, lumber prices have gone crazy in the US and around the world since the pandemic, but they've also leveled off in the past year or so, and lumber prices have calmed down a bit. That said, lumber is still a commodity, and it could be hit by supply and demand shocks again, but so are other building materials. In fact, concrete prices have gone up significantly recently, and so have steel prices, as you can see in these graphs. Due to these variables, concrete homes cost 20 to 30% more than wood-framed homes. Bricks are also more expensive, both in the material itself and the time and skill required to actually lay the brick. And so that means that brick homes still cost around 10% higher or more. There are many other advantages to building homes out of wood. As I mentioned before, wooden framed homes are easier to build. Framing is not rocket science, and 4 walls can be put up in a single day. Timber is lighter and easier to transport longer distances than either concrete or brick. Wooden homes are also easier to insulate and are warmer, which makes wood a better material in colder climates. Wood-framed homes also contain these nifty compartments, which can easily be used to run wires or plumbing and leave air gaps that can be filled with insulation, making wood-framed homes very energy efficient. Wood-framed homes can be easily modified. You could knock down a wall or add a new outlet without too much effort. This is not so in a brick home, where you have to chisel out the wall and then repair it later just to do some light electrical work. But what about natural disasters? Well, the US is big, and we do have a lot of natural disasters. But let's start with earthquakes. In an earthquake, an unreinforced brick or concrete home does not fare well and can be badly damaged and dangerous for its occupants, even in small quakes. Wood-framed houses are able to bend and flex a bit, which actually makes them perform better in earthquakes with less damage. Added to that, reinforced concrete or brick structures can be very expensive. Let's talk about hurricanes. There are 2 major issues with hurricanes. The first is wind, and the second is the storm surge or flooding. A brick home versus a wood home is not going to matter much when it comes to floodwaters. And a lot of concrete and brick homes have roofs that are also built from timber, so they're going to get ripped off just as easy as a wood-framed home. Florida does have perhaps the highest percentage of homes in the US that are not built from wood. This is because of the unique climate in Florida. In addition to hurricanes, Florida has high humidity, heavy rainfall, and a lot of termites. And so most new homes built in Florida, especially the further south you go, are actually built from concrete block. Then there are tornadoes. In the US, we have an area called Tornado Alley where tornadoes are common, especially in the spring. In a tornado, you have powerful winds that can not only rip your roof off, but can also pick up debris like cars and hurl them into buildings. Your brick home is not going to survive a car being thrown at it. And a lot of people that I've talked to in Tornado Alley also say that it would be easier to survive being buried in a wood pile than it would be being buried in a brick pile. Now here's the other thing about tornadoes. Now I technically live in Tornado Alley here in North Texas, which is new for me, but I see it as a numbers game. There are around 800 to 1,000 tornadoes per year, but many of those touch down in unpopulated areas. And when they do hit a populated area, they're pretty narrow in the amount of significant damage that they do. So at a certain point, it becomes a game of probabilities. So yes, your home could be destroyed in a tornado, but it probably won't be, even if a tornado hits nearby. Now, those probabilities may help some people feel better, but it certainly doesn't help my insurance rates. Now let's talk about fires. There have been some devastating forest fires in the US that have destroyed entire towns. But in this type of devastation, a brick home would not survive either. Now, in an individual house fire, a brick home may fare better, but keep in mind that building codes in the US have been created to make homes very safe. They've also been updated over time, and incidents of homes being damaged or people dying in fires have decreased significantly over time. So here is the truth. Wood-framed houses that are constructed properly and maintained correctly can last for 100 to 150 years or longer. Basically, they can outlast all of us. Wood-framed houses are cheaper to produce, both because of the cost of materials, the availability of materials, and the cost of labor. They can be built faster and can be built larger than brick or cement homes at the same cost. Lumber can also be more environmentally friendly than other materials, as it is a sustainable resource, as long as forests are managed correctly, of course. That also makes wooden buildings a carbon sink. Wood homes can also provide more protection in some natural disasters, and depending upon the climate, is an all-around better material. Wood homes are more customizable, and it's easier to expand or remodel a wood-framed home than it is a brick or cement home. But I want to know what you think. What are some of the advantages or disadvantages that I failed to mention? I've had a lot of comments from people, particularly Europeans, talking down to us Americans about our quote-unquote cardboard homes. But again, I am interested in hearing from any of you that have lived in a wooden home and a brick home, and I want to know what your thoughts are in terms of what's better and what you like about each. Also, one other thing to keep in mind is that not all wood-framed homes are created equal, and there has been a significant decline in lumber quality over the past few decades, and that can actually impact the longevity of the homes that are being built today. I recently made a video about lumber quality to explain all of the ins and outs and why we are seeing such a decline in lumber quality. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. It's actually a really interesting story. As always, be sure to like this video, share it with someone else who may find it interesting, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.